She shoved my son so hard he fell on the concrete. Then she grabbed his birthday bike and screamed, "Stolen property." We had just moved into this neighborhood 2 weeks ago. It was my son's 9th birthday, his first one since we lost his mom. I saved up for that new red mountain bike for months. He was riding it in front of our new house, laughing, waving to me. And then she came storming up the street, that clipboard in hand and rage in her eyes. "Where did he get that?" she barked before even saying hello. I told her it was his birthday. I even offered to show her the receipt. But she wasn't interested in facts, just control. Before I could reach them, she pushed my son, yanked the bike out of his hands and shouted that she'd be calling the authorities because children like him are a danger to the neighborhood. Neighbors came out. My son was shaking. And I realized this wasn't just a bad day. This was the beginning of a nightmare called living next to Karen. But before we dive deep into how this all unfolded, if you've ever had a neighbor like this or just believe no child should be treated this way, please take a moment to give this video a thumbs up. We tell real Karen stories every single day, and every like, comment, and subscribe helps keep this channel going and pushes these stories into the light. And we'd really love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach. Thanks for being here. Now let me tell you how that one day turned into the fight of our lives. We had only been in Pine Hills for a few weeks. Just me and my son trying to start over. It was supposed to be a quiet neighborhood. Big trees, picket fences, neighbors who waved from across the street. We were finally beginning to exhale. And then came Karen. She introduced herself not with a welcome basket, but with a clipboard and a list of guidelines she claimed were required to live on the block. HOA stuff. Problem was, we weren't in the HO. Our house was on the corner, and technically not under the association's jurisdiction. I politely told her that. She squinted like I'd just cursed at her. "Well, HOA or not, we all try to keep this place civilized," she said. I smiled, nodded, and closed the door. I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what she did on my son's birthday. He had just turned 9. First birthday since his mom passed. I saved up for a red mountain bike, the exact one he'd circled in the store catalog for months. We even baked our own cupcakes. It was a small celebration, just the two of us, some balloons, and him doing laps on the sidewalk with a grin wide enough to split his cheeks. Then I saw her. Karen. She marched up like she owned the asphalt. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. I opened the gate just in time to hear her say, "Where did you get that bike?" My son, confused but polite, said, "My dad got it for me. It's my birthday." Karen turned to me. "Do you have proof of purchase? That bike matches the description of a stolen one from 3 blocks over." I blinked, laughed a little. "Ma'am, I can show you the receipt." But she wasn't interested in receipts. She reached out, grabbed the bike's handlebars, and in the process shoved my son sideways. He fell. "Art." "Hey!" I shouted, running up. "You don't touch my kid." Karen stood her ground. "You don't bring stolen property into my neighborhood. It's his birthday. That's his gift." She pulled out her phone and said, "I'm calling the police. Children like him should be supervised. This is how crime starts." Children like him? My kid was sitting on the ground, blinking back tears, hugging his scraped knee. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains. One man stepped onto his porch, then quickly stepped back inside. I picked up my son and the bike, stormed inside, and locked the door. That night, there was a typed note taped to our mailbox. "Your child's behavior is disruptive to the peaceful nature of our community. Kindly keep bikes out of public areas. PH Community Standards Liaison." There was no such position in Pine Hills. She made it up. I should have reported her right then. But I didn't want to escalate. Big mistake. The next day she knocked on our door. "I need to see the serial number of the bicycle," she said, "to clear things up." I told her to leave. She refused. I closed the door in her face. That week, 3 more letters arrived. All unsigned. All referencing fictional HOA violations. Trash can placement. Improper use of water hoses. Lawn length. One morning I saw her with a measuring tape, measuring the distance from our trash bin to the curb. My son started asking if he could ride only in the backyard. Said he didn't want to make that angry lady mad. It broke me. I bought a security camera that weekend. Pointed it right at the front yard. The footage would soon become very important. But not before things got much worse. It started slow. One morning there was a flyer slipped under our door. No envelope, no name. Pine Hills Neighborhood Expectations, revised 2023. It looked official. HOA logo, rules printed in bold. But something felt off. Rule number 4, no outdoor toys visible from the street. Rule number 7, no celebratory decorations allowed outside designated federal holidays. Rule number 12, no bicycle usage on sidewalks. I looked it over twice. The paper stock was cheaper than HOA mailings. No contact info. No signature. Just a warning, failure to comply will result in fines. I knew immediately, it was Karen. But it got worse. 2 days later, I came home from work to find a large envelope taped to our door. Inside were printed photographs of my son, riding his bike, playing with a Nerf gun in the front yard, sitting on our porch licking a popsicle. Each photo had a sticky note attached, handwritten in all caps. Choking hazard, inappropriate for outdoor play. Disturbing to neighbors, noisy. This is not a playground. That night I couldn't sleep. I rewatched the footage from the security camera. Sure enough, Karen walking by, crouching to take photos like some weirdo on a stakeout. I saved every clip. Then came the trash bin complaint. She claimed we were putting our bins out too early. Code violation. Except I checked the city website. We were fine. Next, she said our mailbox was painted the wrong shade of gray. My son dropped his basketball once and it rolled onto her lawn. She screamed loud enough for the whole block to hear, "You little delinquent. That's trespassing." I ran out, grabbed the ball, told her to back off. She smiled, and said, "You'll learn, dear. We protect order around here." I reported her to the HOA president. He said, "Sorry, she's not actually part of the board. She just acts like she is." What? So nobody could stop her? Not even close. That week I got another letter. This one in my mailbox with the return address smudged off. We have received multiple complaints about an aggressive child roaming the street unsupervised. For his safety and the safety of others, we strongly advise indoor activities only. HOA reserves the right to escalate if behavior continues. Again, she wasn't part of it. I told my son to stay inside for a few days. He didn't argue. And then she crossed the line again. I was working in the garage when I heard voices. Looked out the window and saw Karen talking to 2 neighbors, pointing at our house, whispering. I stepped outside. She smiled sweetly. "Oh, hi. We're just talking about starting a neighborhood watch. Some of the children here, well, they need extra supervision." I looked at the 2 neighbors. One of them shrugged uncomfortably. The other quickly walked away. Later that evening, I saw the same neighbor, Ms. Molina, standing near her fence. I asked what Karen had said. She said your son might be troubled. That maybe something's wrong at home. She's been telling people she might contact someone. You know, child services. I stood there stunned. She also made a post on Facebook, Ms. Molina added quietly. With a photo. I rushed inside, opened my laptop. There it was. Just trying to keep our neighborhood safe. Some kids need more than bikes and cupcakes. They need boundaries. Hashtag community matters, hashtag Pine Hills Pride. Underneath, a photo of my son, his face blurred but our porch clearly visible. The comments were a mix of confusion and support. "That's so scary, Karen. You're so brave. Some parents don't belong in family homes." I was shaking. Enough was enough. I called my lawyer friend. He said to start gathering everything. I printed screenshots, saved videos, saved the letters, documented everything. Because clearly she wasn't going to stop. That weekend I woke up to the sound of crunching. Outside, Karen was at our curb, snapping photos of our recycling bin. A literal picture of a milk carton. I stepped outside. She didn't even flinch. "Do you know that soy-based packaging isn't picked up on this route?" she said. I looked at her deadpan. "Is this what you do with your life?" She took another photo. "I'm just making sure we don't let one bad seed spoil the garden." I watched her walk away. She didn't know I had installed a second camera, this one catching her in full view, crouching by our mailbox the night before. And something told me she'd only just begun. I didn't think it could get worse. But then she came for my son, not just to scold or shame him, but to remove him. It started with whispers. Subtle at first. A neighbor would cross the street instead of passing us. A woman at the corner bakery avoided eye contact when I said hello. One evening, an older man who used to wave just turned his back as we walked by. I thought I was imagining it. Until Ms. Molina messaged me a video. No text. Just a recording. Karen. Standing in the cul-de-sac. Talking to a small group of neighbors. Voice loud and clear. "He's unstable. I'm telling you, there's something off with that child. The way he looks at people. The way he talks to adults. Is not normal. You've seen how wild he is. Imagine what happens behind closed doors. Someone off camera said, maybe his dad needs help. Karen leaned in, whispering, or maybe he needs to be somewhere with professionals. I mean, someone has to care enough to step in. I felt like throwing my phone across the room. Instead, I downloaded the video and saved it in 3 separate folders. But Karen wasn't finished. That same night, I found a letter taped to our front door, printed on the same cheap paper as the fake HOA notes. The safety of our children must come first. If you're unwilling to pursue professional evaluation, the community will be forced to act in your absence. 2 days later, the Department of Family and Child Services knocked on my door. A woman with a clipboard. Calm voice. Hi, we received an anonymous tip about potential neglect and psychological harm. Would you mind answering a few questions? I invited her in. Offered water. Answered everything. My son sat on the couch drawing pictures of birds. When she asked him about his life at home, he said, "It's just me and Daddy now. He makes pancakes on Sundays and lets me pick the music in the car." She smiled, took notes, and left. 2 days later she called back. There's no issue. We're closing the case. But Karen didn't care about results. That same evening she made a public post on the Pine Hills neighborhood Facebook group. We tried to help. Some people aren't meant to raise children. And some children, well, not every child belongs on a bike with the rest. Attached was a blurry photo of my son from the side, cropped just enough to be legally ambiguous, but everyone knew. The post got likes. Dozens. Comments like, "Something always seemed off with that boy. I hear screaming at night from that house. If Karen says it, it's probably true." That night, my son looked up at me and asked, "Do the neighbors hate me?" I didn't know what to say. I hugged him. He whispered, "I don't want to ride my bike anymore." I nodded and I hated myself for it. The next day, someone chalked a message on our sidewalk. "Watch your kid." I scrubbed it off at dawn. Later that week, Ms. Molina told me Karen had started a petition. A real one. Printed. With signatures. The title? Neighborhood Concern. Child Behavior and Domestic Instability at 134 Willow Lane. She claimed my son had screamed at neighbors, thrown toys, damaged property. None of it was true. Some of the signatures were from people who didn't even live in Pine Hills. I asked her how she got those names. She said Karen had people sign at the grocery store. "It's for a neighborhood safety initiative," Karen allegedly told people. My stomach turned. Then came the flyers. Posted on telephone poles and mailboxes. With red ink. Danger doesn't always look like danger. Sometimes it's a smile and a bicycle. No name. No source. But the implication was clear. I went to the HOA again, even though I technically wasn't part of it. I asked for help. The president sighed. "She's persuasive. Some people think she's doing a good thing." "A good thing?" I asked. "She's targeting a 9-year-old. He looked uncomfortable. "You should probably talk to a lawyer." I already had. But before legal action could unfold, Karen made one final move. One I didn't see coming. She contacted the local parenting group and offered to host an informational session on behavioral warning signs in children. And she held it. In her front yard. With pamphlets. And a presentation board. With my son's silhouette on it. Not a photo. A drawing. But it was unmistakable. My son saw it while walking home with his friend. He came in pale and said, "She made a sign about me." I walked over, took photos and called my lawyer. That was the last straw. Because the next morning a reporter called. "Hi, we heard about some kind of conflict in Pine Hills. A woman claiming to represent the HOA is holding child safety meetings about a neighborhood resident. Would you like to comment?" Yes, I would. But not to the press. To the police. And I had all the footage. I knew she'd retaliate. After the flyers, the fake Facebook post, the fake info session. We had proof, yes. But we didn't have justice. Karen wasn't slowing down. She was doubling down. It started with orange vests. 3 of them. 3 adults. One of them Karen, standing in front of her house wearing cheap, highlighter orange security vests and holding walkie-talkies like they were patrolling a war zone. A banner appeared next. Pine Hills Neighborhood Watch, Family Safety Division. Family safety. I almost laughed. Almost. Until they started making rounds. Every night at 7 p.m., Karen and her 2 recruits would do a perimeter walk. They'd shine flashlights at our house. Sometimes they'd pause and take photos of our driveway. One night, my son looked out the window and whispered, She's pointing at my room. I called the police. They said unless there was trespassing or direct harassment, there wasn't much they could do. That same week, my son's bike went missing from the front porch. We found it the next morning, on our lawn, with the tire slashed and the chain yanked off. A sticky note was taped to the handlebars. Hazards like this have no place near children. No signature. No fingerprints. But we both knew. That was when I sent the footage to my lawyer. All of it. From day one. But the worst came 3 days later. Karen filed a formal complaint, with the city. Not the HOA. The city. Claiming she had been assaulted, by my son. I was simply passing by, she wrote, when the child lunged at me with his bicycle. I suffered lower back trauma and have since had difficulty walking without pain. There were photos attached. A wrap around her waist. A cold compress on her shoulder. She even submitted a medical note. I got the notice on a Friday. By Saturday it was all over the Pine Hills Facebook group. Local woman injured after attack by unsupervised child. Dozens of comments. Many from people we'd never met. Some blamed me. Some blamed bad parenting. One even asked if we were outsiders who didn't understand how community works. I lost it. I uploaded the footage. The real footage. Karen approaching the bike. Touching the handlebars. Tugging at them. My son standing a full 3 feet away holding a juice box. At no point did he touch her, or even speak to her. The video ended with her stumbling slightly on the edge of the sidewalk, then looking around before sitting down on the grass. It was damning. And it exploded. One of the HOA board members messaged me directly. Hey, we need to talk. The next week they held a closed-door meeting. Karen wasn't invited. Afterward, the HOA president called me and said, "We've received quite a few complaints about Ms. Klein's recent behavior. We're reviewing her conduct as a representative." It was the first time anyone in Pine Hills admitted something wasn't right. Ms. Molina, the neighbor who'd first sent me the video, stopped by with brownies. She said, "I'm sorry I didn't speak up earlier. We all should have." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. But then came Karen's final move. It was 6:45 a.m. My son was eating cereal. I was making coffee. Bang bang bang, a loud knock on the door. Karen. Holding another clipboard. Holding her phone. And this time with a city official beside her. "This is Mr. Sandler from Code Enforcement," she said with a smug smile. I looked at him. He looked uncomfortable. She launched into her monologue. "This property has ongoing violations. Unsecured items in the yard. Improper paint color on trim. And I believe there's been non-compliant structure modification in the garage." Sandler cleared his throat and said, "Ma'am, this isn't." She cut him off. "I also have concerns about the child. He's left unattended. I have witnesses. I have photos." I opened the door wider. My son stood behind me, holding his spoon. The official looked at him. Then at me. I said, "Would you like to see the footage of her trespassing? Lying? Filing false claims? Because I have hours of it. Categorized by date." Sandler looked absolutely done. Karen was still talking. But then, something beautiful happened. 2 neighbors came out. Then a third. Then a fourth. They stood quietly on their lawns. Watching. One of them, Mr. Ortiz, spoke first. "She's been harassing them for weeks." Then Ms. Levine. "We've seen it. The kid's never been a problem." Sandler turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, I'll be filing a report. Please step back from the property." Karen's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? You believe them over me?" Sandler nodded. She tried to say more. But this time nobody was listening. I looked down at my son. He was smiling for the first time in weeks. It all came crashing down the morning she called the cops on my kid. I was making breakfast when I saw the flashing lights. 2 cruisers pulled up to the curb. I rushed outside and saw Karen, arms flailing, yelling at the officers. "She has a knife. Big one." I saw her waving it. My son was inside, still in his pajamas, watching cartoons. I told the officers as much. One looked uncomfortable. The other asked if they could check around. "Sure," I said. "And you should check my front camera too." They did. The footage was clear. Karen standing across the street with binoculars, then frantically dialing 911 while glancing around for an audience. There was no knife. There was no child outside. There was just Karen once again, desperate to control what she couldn't. "Ma'am," one officer said, "did you actually see the knife?" Karen froze. Yes. I saw something shiny. It looked dangerous." The officer turned to me. Would you be willing to submit this footage formally? Absolutely. Karen started screaming. This is harassment. He moved here to destroy the community. Just look at him, he doesn't even belong here. The officers stepped back. One of them radioed something in. Another cruiser arrived and a supervising officer stepped out. That's when I saw the moment it clicked for Karen that this was serious. She stopped yelling. Her eyes darted. She tried to backpedal. But it was too late. They handcuffed her on the spot for filing a false police report. She shrieked and kicked, calling everyone traitors and threatening lawsuits. My son watched from the window, wide-eyed but quiet. I closed the curtains. I thought that would be the end. But no. 2 days later I got a court summons. Karen was countersuing, claiming I didn't have legal guardianship of my son and that he should be removed from my custody, for his safety. She said I was an unfit single parent with violent tendencies. She even showed up in court with fake witnesses, 2 people no one in the neighborhood recognized. I was furious. But I had something she didn't, the truth. At the hearing, the judge asked my son if he wanted to speak. He did. He walked to the front of the courtroom and said, "She said I was dangerous, but she's the one who hurt me. I just wanted to ride my bike on my birthday." Dead silence. Then I presented the security footage. The false letters. The fake HOA violations. Even the video from a neighbor that caught Karen talking about getting rid of the kid. Her own lies buried her. The judge's face said it all. "Miss Campbell," he said, "you've wasted the court's time, endangered a child, and violated multiple community ordinances. You are sentenced to community service, fined for filing a false police report, and issued a restraining order. You are also hereby removed from any position associated with the HOA." Karen didn't even look at me. She just stared forward like if she didn't blink, none of it would be real. They led her out of the courtroom. Her clipboard was nowhere in sight. Karen moved out 2 months later. No more forged notices. No more angry knocks at night. Just evenings filled with peace, my son's laughter, and his bike tires humming on the sidewalk. The neighbors started waving again. For the first time in a long time, it finally felt like home. Like if you believe no Karen should get away with this. Subscribe for daily stories, and may every Karen meet her court date.